You're listening to episode 75 of Lifestyle Locker Radio with Paul Chek.
But now we have sedentary living. We have people living off of garbage food. We have people not getting nearly enough sleep at night. We have people that are lit up like a Christmas tree due to electromagnetic pollution. So if the body itself is not being adequately managed, then it works from the bottom up and distorts the mind.
Hi, I'm Dr. Josh Hand, and welcome to the Lifestyle Locker Radio, where we dive into what makes an awesome lifestyle. From relationships to money mindset, nutrition to fitness, emotional health to peak performance, we bring you on an amazing journey to unleashing your human potential. So our guest today is Paul Chek, and here's just a little bit about him, because his bio is kind of like a book. So here's just a short piece of it. So Paul Chek is a world-renowned expert in the fields of corrective exercise, high-performance conditioning, and integrative lifestyle management. For over 30 years, Paul's unique, holistic approach to treatment and education has changed the lives of his clients, his students, and his students' clients. By treating the body-mind as a whole system and digging down to the root cause of the problem, Paul has been successful where traditional approaches have consistently failed. Paul is a sought-after international presenter and consultant for organizations such as the Chicago Bulls, Australia's Canberra Raiders, and the U.S. Air Force Academy. His information is not only cutting edge, but is also very applicable. Students leave his classes with information they can use and achieve results right away. He's also a frequent guest on podcasts like this one, radio and internet radio shows. He is the author of 6 books and numerous videos, courses, and advanced training programs for professional development in the health and fitness industry. Paul is the founder of the Chek Institute, based in California, and the PPS Success Mastery Coaching Program. So here he is. Here's the world famous Paul Chek. Hey everyone, we have world famous Paul Chek here in the Lifestyle Locker. So grateful to have him. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So this is really neat. You know, you were turned on to me by a friend, your friend as well. And he's like, oh, you got to talk to this guy, Paul. He's into like everything, knows everything about everything, health and wellness and everything. I'm like, okay, sounds like right up my alley. I'd love to talk to this guy. And then, you know, we're talking pre-show. I was telling you this, but you know what? I'm like, who is this Paul Chek? How do I not know of him? And then I saw your picture of you doing like a deadlift. I'm like, I've seen this guy somewhere, whether it's social media or a magazine. I don't even know where I've seen you. Have you been in magazines?
Lots of them, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's probably from like a Men's Health or something like that in the past.
Yeah, I've been in Men's Health, Muscle and Fitness. I wrote for Muscle and Fitness several articles. I wrote lots of articles for Muscle Media 2000 when that was out. It's too many for me to remember.
No, totally. But that's why I'm like, I know this guy from somewhere. I know this guy. So I'd like to kind of dive into a couple different areas here. But first, I want to know, you know, who is Paul Chek? Like, how did you kind of come from, I don't want to go back to the womb, if you will, but you've evolved into this mecca of natural health care and fitness. So
yeah, you know, it's a long story, but to kind of encapsulate it, my mother switched from Christian Science to becoming a yogi when I was 12. And she joined the Self-Realization Fellowship, which is Paramahansa Yogananda's teachings. And she still to this day practices that. She's been to India for 3 advanced initiations. She's meditated probably pretty much every single day for at least an hour for, as long as I can remember, probably since I was 12.
Wow.
She's very holistic. You know, my stepfather, my real father died when I was 8, but my stepfather was a farmer. I was raised on a 140-acre sheep farm on Vancouver Island. My parents immigrated to Canada when I was 12. We raised our own food. We grew our own produce. We had sheep, chickens, cows, horses, pigs, we were pretty much a self-contained system, and our farming business was wool. We were in the woolen industry, and we had our own woolen mill. So really my life on the farm was a mixture of yoga principles and teachings and living, and going to the Self-Realization Fellowship Temple and studying with the monks every weekend. And then when I was 15, I spent the summer in summer camp with them, learning meditation techniques and all sorts of things. And Yogananda's system's very, very inclusive of diet and of exercise. He's big on exercise and creativity and meditation. So I was pretty well grounded in two things that I think have really been the underpinning of my whole way of relating to the world, and that is how a farm works. You cannot play games on a farm, or you'll starve to death, or you kill off your animals, or things like that. So you learn how biological systems work and interface with nature, and you learn the importance of responsibility and the importance of priority and the importance of meeting essential basics, because if the foundation of things like food, hydration, shelter, warmth are not met, then there's a real objective reaction, that can be costly and lead to lots of trouble. So with the spiritual training that I was given and that my mother brought to the family, and the logic, rationale, and practicality and intelligence, my stepfather, who was a very, very intelligent man, he was a special effects man for Universal Studios and master builder, and can do almost anything. So I kind of got the logical, practical from my father, and I got the holistic nutrition and inner world from my mother, and that really was the basis of how I entered into the public sphere. And being a competitive athlete all my life, heavy into boxing, martial arts, I was a sponsored motocross racer. I was sponsored by Honda when I was younger. I played every sport you could play and fought on the U.S. Army boxing team, and then became the trainer of the boxing team. And I represented the United States Army in triathlon, and represented the Army in Hilton Head in 1986. I've been a top 10 finisher in 6 times in USTS distance triathlons,
Yeah.
And so I had a very diverse athletic background. I was very competitive as an athlete. And from the very beginning of my career, I noticed that the way people were training and eating was really not helping them in a number of different ways. For example, when I played football in Canada, full contact football, typical our kind of football, not soccer like Europeans.
Yeah.
Our team was made of country boys, guys from farms like me. And whenever we would play any of the city teams, we would just annihilate them. I mean, it would be like a 40-point difference. And the thing that I noticed every time is that these guys were like nursing on bottles of Coke, eating white bread, and just didn't have the kind of toughness that farm boys have to have, because, you can't stop working just because it's wet or cold. You got to get stuff done regardless. So coming from that early observation that the environment and the work ethic and the food had a huge impact on athletic performance, it kind of stained my vision. And as I rose through the ranks, I became more and more unique in the way I ate and lived. And when I was on the Army boxing team, fighting on the team before I became the trainer, I was also representing the Army in triathlon. So the coaches were baffled, and so were the boxers, that I could do average of 6 hours a day of training with the boxers as a fighter, and then still ride about 250 miles a week, swim 7 to 10 miles a week, and run an additional 35 to 40 miles a week above what we did on the boxing team, because the boxing training alone was wiping the fighters out. And I always brought, raw food and yogurt dips and lean meats, and I progressively lost weight over 3 months. These guys would try to crash their weight down in the last 10 days and, starve themselves and do full workouts and sweats and dehydrate themselves. And so my point is, as I climbed the ranks, I got more and more unusual looking. And I was able to actually compensate in many different sporting environments for a lack of the kind of natural talent that a lot of the top guys have with sheer like fitness and determination and mental strength. Like, I didn't start boxing until I was 12, but when I was on the Army boxing team, there was guys on our team that by the time they were 19 had 320 fights under their belt.
Wow.
So even though I was a good fighter and I was good enough to you have to fight your way onto the Army boxing team, compared to the guys I was fighting, their level of skill was like, several times more polished due to that much exposure and early development. But I could just work these guys to death. I physically could just work them to death, and I was tough as hell, so they couldn't take me out. And so it used to piss the coaches off, because guys that should have just been handling me like butter, I'd get them to the second round and they were too tired, and I'd just start beating the hell out of them. And so that led, in a long story short, that led to the coaches saying, we need this guy as our trainer because he is way, way fitter. And I was winning military competitions of all sorts. It was in the newspaper all the time. I still hold 2 obstacle and confidence course records in the military.
Wow. Well, that's pretty neat.
So, I was doing this while I was a full-time fighter. So these guys were like, how in the world can this be possible? Even the team doctor used to think it was strange. In fact, when I used to go to triathlons, they would often do double evaluations on me because my resting heart rate was often as low as 36.
Wow.
And they would,
holy cow.
And they were worried I was, having some sort of a low blood pressure or vagal response. So they would make me go through these long evaluations. And during pre-fight physical evaluations, this is like 2 hours before a fight or the day before a fight in a tournament, my resting heart rate would be about 45 to 47. And the doctors would always find that very strange because just, a lot of adrenaline running through you. And they would say to me almost every time, aren't you scared? And I would say, no, my job is to give my opponent maximum opportunity to lose. And I'm here to do that.
I love that. That's so great. That's so,
that's sort of an encapsulated version. But really what I'm saying is I came from Vancouver Island, British Columbia, where the weather is raunchy a lot of the time.
Hard, yeah.
160 inches of rain a year. The first year we moved there, we had 8 feet of snow in the front yard. The whole house was covered. We have a long driveway, so that's a lot of shoveling, and there's a lot of snow in the winter. And lots of animals and lots of work and, good, hard sporting experiences, and just asking myself what works and what doesn't work, and having lots of friends. Like, a lot of my buddies were elite athletes. 2 of my buddies were elite 3 of them were elite motocross racers. 6 of them had black belts. One of my best friends was my sparring partner when I was in my boxing club for 3 years. He was the Canadian champion lightweight boxer. He became the world champion in kickboxing in his weight class. He fought 8 amateur fights, knocked everybody out, turned pro, and won the world championship on his 8th fight.
This is a guy, were you training him? Or is he?
No, he and I were sparring partners.
Wow.
I went to the same boxing club, and when he switched to martial arts, I was one of the few guys that would train with him because he was just brutal. But so my point is I was around guys that were very intensely competitive and were testing everything. And as you start climbing the ranks in athletic competition, you actually start seeing that same mentality reaching into all sorts of areas that's not so ideal. Like whether it be steroids or stimulants or drugs to increase performance or, everything. I've seen people using speed, all sorts of stuff. So you get to watch, if you have this holistic kind of vantage point, see, well, how does that work? And you might see somebody has a one-hit wonder, but then the next thing you know, they're fried and their back's killing them, or they're they have emotional upheavals and can't get along with anybody. And so after a while, you just sort of start realizing there's a few key principles that have to be appreciated, or you just burn yourself out and you go nowhere.
Yeah, so let's fast forward. So this is pretty neat. The backstory is going to be really good because I want to get into like the Chek Institute eventually and talk about some of these things that you're now, like I say, you're a master teacher at this
Thanks.
point. What was the point in your life where you said, you know what, I have to learn more or get more schooling or teach myself in the worlds of like nutrition, into mindset, into your body, like to dive in deep?
Well, there was no point. It's never stopped, and it's always been there. Coming from a farm, and my father was not somebody you messed around with. He had zero tolerance for making excuses. It was, get it done now. I'll be back in an hour. If it's not done, you know what the consequences will be. So I found very early in my life that knowledge created freedom. Knowledge created respect, and applied knowledge increased your likelihood of getting acknowledged and moving up the ranks in any job or environment faster. And I also just am so competitive, even with myself, that I always keep asking, well, what causes that? Or how can you make that work more efficiently or more effectively? So I think it just, for me, when I became a trainer and then a therapist, I always was very interested in getting to the actual root of a person's problems. And after, I've been doing this for 32 years now. So after you get to a certain point in this kind of a reductio ad absurdum type process, you start running into the same root issues. And that's really what developed the Chek Institute, was a perpetual exploration in the physiology and the psychology, or the psychophysical relationships, and how do you actually get to the root of a problem, and what are the things that you have to have in place. I used to be a mechanic, and when I went to school to be a mechanic, they taught you there's 3 things you got to check on an engine before you do anything else, or you're going to waste a lot of time and money. It has to have ignition, it has to have fuel delivery, and it has to have compression. And I've seen 1,000 mechanics do everything but that, only to spend a lot of money doing a lot of silly things because they didn't check the 3 essentials. So over years of research, I boiled the 4 essentials down to what I call the 4 doctors. 1, you have to identify what is happy making for that person, or they have no idea how to produce happiness in their life. And that's what I call the 1 love. What is the thing you love enough to grow for and to invest yourself fully into? Then you have to be conscious of how you move your body and how you move your emotions and your mind. So each of these 4 doctors works physically, emotionally, and mentally. So Dr. Happy, you need to have a happy mind to have a happy body, and a happy body and a happy mind makes healthy emotions. Dr. Movement, you have to have enough movement to fuel the movement needs for movement nutrition and pump and clean and strengthen your body. But you also have to be conscious of how you move your emotional and mental energy, because you can be a fit pain in the backside or a fit moron,
Yeah.
Then Dr. Diet, you have to be conscious of your individual needs and food quality and water quality and hydration. And you have to be aware of individuality, because one man's medicine is easily another man's poison when it comes to diet. And so you also have to be aware that the physical body feeds on food, the emotional body feeds on emotions, and the mental body feeds on thoughts. So a lot of things that happen to the body, such as obesity or eating disorders, have to do with the fact that a person is trying to medicate a problem at the wrong level. If somebody's, for example, comes from a situation of abandonment, they're going to have a love deficit. They're going to have a sense of disconnection. So those people often actually associate their connection with something that gives them a sense of love with food and don't realize that they're eating way more food than their body can effectively process because they're trying to actually fill an emotional emptiness. So their hunger is actually for love and connection, but they're cross-wired so that they actually reach for food. And oftentimes that's safer than their human experiences. So there's an example where I have to look at someone's emotional diet. And then you have a mental diet. The mind feeds on thoughts and ideas. And in our world, many people have their heads full of thoughts and ideas that are not congruent with their dream or with their physiological systems or what they actually need. For example, look at all the people doing very stupid things from reading magazines, whether it be stuff regarding exercise, body care, cosmetics, athletic everything. Performance. So ideas can actually be very dangerous to the physical and the emotional body. And that's Dr. Happiness is the domain of mind, but those things go into action through movement, and they're a form of diet for the mind. And then Dr. Quiet is on the South Pole. If you orient these north, south, east, and west, you got Dr. Happiness in the west, Dr. Movement in the north, Dr. Diet in the east, and Dr. Quiet in the south. Dr. Quiet represents rest, introspection, and regeneration, and energy potential. So most people don't really have any awareness at all of how to manage the energies of fire relative to water. For example, over-exercising is too much heat, causes a lot of inflammation, and depletes the water systems, and the water system is the home of the emotional energies in the body. So if a person's over-exercising because they're actually got an addiction or they're medicating a pain and they're not conscious of it, they actually can burn their adrenal glands out, dry themselves out. They're much more susceptible to musculoskeletal injuries of all types, chronic injuries. A lot of runners, for example, chronic injury and distance runners of fifth metatarsal stress fracture, which is almost always an overtraining and a diet problem, which means they don't have enough knowledge of how Dr. Quiet works. So in my system, there's active, passive, and total rest, and each of those approaches has different key functions that have to be used, and if a person's unaware of those, it's going to cost them. So that kind of summarizes the essentials. And having studied a lot, I mean, you know, my house is my office here is a big house. It's 3,400 square feet, but it's mostly my library.
Yeah, I could see.
I mean, there's a lot of it. And I've studied thousands of books and practiced a lot of things and traveled the world studying with the best doctors and the best therapists. But I studied psychology, I studied spirituality, I studied metaphysics, I studied religion, I studied philosophy, I studied healing, I studied physiology, I studied diet and lifestyle and nutrition and all the related sciences, endocrinology, all the body sciences. And I saw that the physical body is actually a living mirror of the mind, which is basically, if you think of a coin, on one side of the coin, you got a head that would represent your self-consciousness, your ego awareness, or the I. On the other side of the coin, you have spirit, that which is moving you, the dancer inside of the dancer. What's moving the dancer. And then in the middle, you have the soul, which is basically what's conscious of these experiences, but is not actually caught in them. So it's the witness. And so when I look at what's going on in people's lives, I know that the body is always telling me the truth because it has no mechanism to lie. And the body is always broadcasting choices that are being made unconsciously. So the body actually carries a story in it. And when you know how the body works and you know what each part of the body correlates to at a psychological or soul level or mental level, and then you analyze what's going on in a person's life, it's really not that hard with the right training and enough practice, and also to heal yourself enough that you're a receptive instrument yourself. So when I'm with somebody, I can empty myself, and I know whatever's happening to me in their presence is coming from the energy in their fields. So if they're, for example, holding a lot of emotion in their small intestine and it's all wound up, then my small intestine starts to wind up, which is not my normal state. And I know how to empty myself. So I quickly know to put my awareness and use my inner visioning or inner sensation or voyances to read what's going on inside of that person. And I know to ask key questions. And because each of the part of the body correlates psychologically through the chakra system, as an example. So I basically built a system that looks at all aspects of the human being as an integrated whole. And then based on what their dream is, I do a comprehensive analysis and identify what is in the way of accomplishing the dream. And oftentimes it could be a physical limitation, but more often than not, it's a mental, emotional, or psychological limitation or some kind of an unconscious fear or programmed belief or behavior.
Yeah. So I was actually going to ask you that as you're going through, all these different quadrants of life, the mental, the physical, the spiritual, the chemical, meaning like the food. You're saying so the mental is definitely, you think, the top of the chain?
Well, it is. It is. I mean, we all have bodies, and if our bodies are fed properly, I mean, think of your body like an animal. I talked about farming. If you didn't have an individual ego, you had more like an animal group soul, like a sheep or a cow. As long as you got enough exercise, had enough water, had good food, and could be protected from the elements to the degree that was necessary, you'd thrive, just like any animal does. Yeah. Once you start putting in the conscious element of the ego, which has the capacity to choose and to ignore its instincts and to conjure up ideas that may not be physiologically sound, in other words, staying up and drinking beer all night long goes against your instincts and your body's needs and your desire for rest. So those types of situations are really more the common insult to the body. But now we have sedentary living. We have people living off of garbage food. We have people not getting nearly enough sleep at night. We have people that are lit up like a Christmas tree due to electromagnetic pollution. So if the body itself is not being adequately managed, then it works from the bottom up and distorts the mind. You can, think of an invisible line between the psyche and the body, which is like the junction point between the back of a mirror and the front of the mirror. The back of the mirror is the reflective surface, but the glass is what you're looking into. Yeah. So the psyche is like that invisible, transparent glass, but the body is the back of the mirror that's reflecting the psyche out. So the body's really a living mirror of the psyche. And the universe is a living mirror of whatever you want to call God, the 0-point field if you're more left brain, or God if you're more religious or spiritual. But not a personal God. It is the zero force. It is that which is behind all things.
Yeah, the universe, if you will, right? Yeah.
Well, it's behind. I'm saying what's behind the universe.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
The universe is like the body of the divine, but what's behind it is just like your thoughts. You can't see them; they make you dance.
Yeah. So, with you mentioning food and like that lower level. So, in your experience, I work with as a chiropractor and the guy that teaches lifestyle with people that, they try to change all of these different areas of their body. For instance, an athlete may say, I just need to keep focusing on whatever training it may be, whether it's boxing or running or CrossFit or whatever it may be. But then I see him eating Pop-Tarts in the gym.
Well, of course, that's part of that is a residue from scientific materialism and from the fact that our whole nutrition approach, as it's taught in universities and any kind of school that teaches nutrition at large, is we're dealing with, for example, if you go all the way back to what is a calorie, well, it's a measure of heat from a burn calorimeter. So what happens is the whole concept of a calorie now is whittled down to a scientific materialist viewpoint that food is nothing but energy. And the result of that is that we have lost the awareness that food is not just energy, it is information. And it carries light frequencies, harmonic resonances, homeopathic medicine. It carries hormonal medicine. It carries mineral and regulatory medicine and a long, long list of other things. But when you only think of food as energy, then you shop for food like you shop for gasoline.
Yeah, the cheapest one you can find.
Exactly. And, whatever it says on the package, you believe it because you're programmed. And so what I've tried to teach people all over the world and share in my teachings is that food is by no means just energy. It is information. And if the energy is not congruent with your body's systems, it will cause problems. In other words, if you eat too much processed sugar, there's a lot of energy in there, but the information that the body needs to regulate and integrate the energy is missing. So it's kind of like drinking dynamite and then trying to be a flamethrower.
Yeah.
You're going to blow up.
Yeah, no kidding.
And, and we've gotten away from seasonal eating. So if you think of food as energy, the foods that you eat in the summertime when it's hot are usually foods that carry information about how to regulate heat and cool the body. Mm-hmm. And the foods if you eat winter foods in the summertime, especially as an athlete, you're going to find yourself chronically overheated, not sleeping well, have a dull, foggy head. You'll feel like you're in a sauna all the time and you can't get out. And so I'm just using simple analogies, but you look at food all has color, right? Color is light, and light and color are vibration. And all things that we interact with, including ourselves, are vibration, and frequency determines response. So, people have completely and utterly gotten trapped in a scientific, materialistic, mathematical, logical viewpoint about food and almost all things health. And it's only now that we're realizing that approach is actually killing us all. We've got more doctors, more therapists, more nutritionists, more dietitians, more trainers, more coaches, and more educators on health per capita than we've ever had in the history of man. We're the sickest we've ever been.
Yeah,
why?
Especially the U.S.
Because most of them have bought into the scientific materialist model, and they're doing, as I say, I teach my students how to think, not what to think. But education systems at large teach you what to think, not how to think. Being raised on a farm, I was taught how to think, not what to think. Yeah. And I left school. My last year of school was the 9th grade because I just found it very frustrating. Teachers couldn't answer my questions or didn't want to answer my questions.
Yeah, it didn't fit in their paradigm.
No, and I had the same problem in church. With the monks, I didn't have that problem. They actually loved my questions. But when it was a Christian church, I was not rewarded at all for asking questions, and some of them were quite potent too. But that's I don't want to kind of run off because I'm sure you might have other questions. But I'm trying to highlight how I learned over time to see the body, and I learned that because I would have patients that nobody could figure out. And so I had to see what was missing. What did they not get addressed? What systems connect to this system that affect this system? So you get into meridian systems and all these other interactive systems. And then I developed the Chek totem pole, which is a hierarchy of control systems, so that all my students knew when you're assessing the human body, you need to go in this order. Because in the totem pole, whatever's on the top controls all the systems below it. Mm-hmm. For example, breath is only second to the psyche itself. So anything that disrupts your ability to breathe will cause compensations throughout the musculoskeletal system and physiological systems. But you can try to help someone breathe better who maybe you don't realize actually has a fear, a phobia, or some kind of a wound that they haven't addressed that's disrupting their regulation of breathing because they're anxious all the time. So you can go to every breathing instructor you want, but until you actually heal the psychic wound, which might be a death in the family, a separation, a divorce, or being an orphan, then you're only dealing with the symptom. And so the system I developed shows what systems control what other systems. And it turns out that almost everything that people are running around getting help for are what I call the slave joints, which are everything from C3 to L5, the wrist, shoulder, elbow, hand, hips, knees, ankles, feet. They're all slaves to everything higher up.
Yep.
Whether it be the limbic system, the visceral system, the glandular system, the upper cervical spine, the auditory vestibular system, the visual system, and the bite or the oral system for masticating food, because it's very, very powerful.
Yeah. So you said something that's interesting, and I also just wanted something you said on your website. You know, people are constantly just chasing their symptoms around in circles. You know, there's a doctor for every part of the body, if you will. And you know, I absolutely love what you said, because this is what we teach in our practice: is, you know, the only way the body heals is from the inside out. It's not an outside in job.
No, it's an inside job, and you know, an example of why people run around chasing symptoms is because it's built into the Western nutritional model. People don't even realize, for example, that the whole field of nutrition was invented by General Mills specifically to train people to sell processed food, which we call supplements. And if you look at Royal Lee's work, he showed you that there's no such thing as isolated vitamins anywhere in nature. And in nature, all vitamins work in complexes, like living systems. And in the complex are minerals, trace minerals, vitamins, enzymes, cofactors such as phenolics, terpenes, and alkaloids, and they all are in different combinations, but he describes a vitamin complex as more like a Swiss watch and asks the question, what part of a watch tells time? Well, the whole watch tells time. You can't have a watch without a part, or it's dysfunctional. So when people start taking isolate vitamins, they don't realize it's like eating 150 sweet pans, and now the body has to run around trying to scavenge all the rest of the parts of the watch together. So you might take B6 for night blindness, and the next thing you know, 3 weeks later, you can see better at night, but your scalp's itchy as hell, and you've got, you know, some weird buzzing in your ears because now you're triggering off deficiencies in other systems, and it stresses the hell out of the body, because if you bring in isolated supplements at doses more than your body can absorb and utilize, it has to be detoxified just like a drug. So the point I'm making is these companies that sell isolates have really created a self-perpetuating business, because people keep running back there for every symptom and don't realize they're now got the symptoms of the symptoms of the symptoms that they had 3 bottles of pills ago.
Exactly. They're just they're going down the rabbit hole very fast.
Yeah, and it's expensive, but it's profitable for those that are, you know, capitalizing on it. But it's also very, very destructive to nature, because, you know, 96% of all the supplements used out there are not organic. And people don't realize when you're taking a supplement, you're taking a concentrate of a commercially farmed product, and there is no mechanism for filtering pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, rodenticides, etc. So you're actually concentrating chemicals in your body that are very, very poisonous and damaging and can cause huge problems with your genes. All in the name of high performance, or all in the name of trying to get some fat off, or all in the name of not having so many wrinkles, and the list goes on.
So if someone, you know, if someone came to you and said, you know, I'd like to add more XYZ to my diet, you know, via supplementation, and would you recommend whole food supplements to people?
Yes, excuse me, I drank my tea too fast.
Breathe, please. Oxygen, we said, is good for you.
Well, you know, what I do is I look at each case individually, and I was trained in functional medicine by one of the pioneers of functional medicine who I studied with for 3 years. But not to get sidetracked on that, what I do is I look at each person individually. It's very easy for me to see, because I have people they start by keeping a 10-day diet and lifestyle log that looks at key things that I need to know about. But when I look at a case, it's pretty easy for me to tell if the problem can be handled with proper nutrition, like learning to eat right, learning what plants have the nutrition that you need, or what sources are there that you can put in your diet for that, whether it be fats or carbohydrates or plant source nutrition or whatever it is. But it's not that often that I have to go past just sound diet and 4 doctor practices, because you got to remember, almost all diet deficiencies are, shall we say, phase locked with the imbalances in the use of the principle of movement, or managing a person's energy levels, or moving their body. And it's also phase locked with their choices that they're making, and how they're using their mind, and how they're resting. So in other words, if we say, what supplements do you need to help give someone to help with adrenal fatigue, we could list a bunch of supplements, and I could say, go eat that. But if I don't address that they're over-exercising and under-resting, and that they're pushing themselves because they have an addiction to intensity and were raised in a very intense family environment, and don't realize they're medicating the intensity by over-exercising, it won't matter how many adrenal supplements you take. You'll actually just be pissing in the wind with that approach.
Yeah.
So you see, what I'm saying is, if I need to test the adrenals or test any of the systems, I can use functional medicine. But I'm really more interested in, how did you create the imbalance? Do you have a fungal infection? Do you have a parasite infection or a bacterial dysbiosis? And then I got to know how you got that. Like, what is it in your lifestyle that lends itself to that sort of a situation? So if I do need supplementation, I always go for the highest quality I can possibly get. If I'm in a situation where there's a supplement that I need, but I cannot get an organic source, then I choose the least invasive, the best option that I can get. But that doesn't happen that often. Really, when you address 4 doctors and surround the dragon responds pretty quickly in general.
Yeah. So I'm just going to say this. I've watched the videos on that on your blog. So I'll put a link to that. The 4 doctors. It's really great. I think people can dive into that.
The series I just did, the fastest way to health.
Yeah. So I think I want to definitely connect people to that. It's really good, and it's got visuals and everything as well. So people will get a lot of take home from that. So let's jump into like the fitness as well. So you went from a boxer, triathlete, football, all the above. What do you say?
Motocross.
What does fitness look like for you now compared to back then?
Not much different. Just, when I was probably up till I was about 40, 46 maybe, I trained a lot harder than I do now, but I just found that as I aged and my testosterone levels dropped, I think my whole, as I've matured as a man, it was less important for me to prove myself by being strong and fast and, outrunning, outlifting, outperforming students or people that might have been competitive with my philosophy and, criticized it. I would say, okay, well, if that's true, then how can I do this? As a younger man, I felt like I had to prove that my system worked. And the people that were most around me were athletes, so I proved it to the athletes with athletic achievement.
Okay.
But as I grew inside myself and matured, I felt that I didn't need to do that anymore. I already knew that what I was doing worked. I'd been doing it for a very long time even then. And I felt that what was more important for me was to use the time that I used to have to spend to keep myself super fit. A normal workout for me used to be like in the gym, I would do 10 sets of 4 to 6 in the deadlift with 500 pounds. And I might come in a second time in the afternoon and do my secondary exercises.
Okay. So a lot of time.
Yeah. And I reached a very high level of strength. One of the pictures that's most famous of me is me doing a single arm clean and jerk with 160-pound dumbbells, which I could do left arm and right arm for multiple reps. And even to this day at 56, I can still do multiple single arm chin-ups on each arm. But what I did was to grow myself deeper, into my spiritual practice, I had to find time somewhere. And so I felt that I needed to work on the inner gym more than the outer gym.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a transition and I made that transition quite a number of years ago. I studied with Tai Chi master Fong Ha in around 2000 and did a series of gongs with him and developed my Tai Chi awareness. And I took medical Qi Gong training and practiced that for quite a while. I'd always had my meditation techniques from the monks and from our yoga training as a kid. And I study a lot of things. So I take that extra time that used to be Superman time and work on developing the parts of myself and using the practices, because I do a lot of research into healing techniques. And I'm also a medicine man and spirit guide through the Native American Council and practice Native American healing. And
dude, you're so cool.
well, these are the things that are interesting to me. And so my policy is don't do things to your clients or your patients that you haven't tested on yourself or you don't know what you're putting them into.
Agreed.
So I needed more time, because as I mastered the physical components of the human body, I kept realizing that the biggest problem isn't the body. The body's highly intelligent. If you give it what it needs, you hardly ever have to do anything. It's the way we manage ourselves in relationship to a body and each other. So I spent a lot of I'm 56, so probably the last 12 to 15 years, there was a transition to putting my intensity into my studies and practices of the inner realms so that I could learn the methodologies and develop the skills for more effectively determining what's really driving a person's challenges or limiting their success.
Yeah. So if, let's say, 20-something or 30-something-year-old guys in athleticism, really into a sport, and you were to give them some advice, would you tell them to put, obviously they need to put the time and energy into the sport, but would you have them put a lot of time and energy into mindset and mindfulness and things of that nature?
I would look very carefully at what exactly that person's profile was. To answer your previous question more thoroughly, I still lift weights. Mm-hmm. I do a lot of stone work. I make stone sculptures. I do stone stacking, but great big huge ones with heavy stones.
Seen the pictures, yep.
Yeah, it's very intense and it's very, very dangerous work. So it's very invigorating, but it's very creative. And that's part of my work with my soul, because I let my soul guide everything I do out there. I go into no mind, into meditation. So it's very, very physical meditation. Mm-hmm. And I, occasionally I'll do hill sprints, or I'll, hop around on my jolly jumper, or use ropes. But I have a very diverse approach to exercise. I have a lot of toys in the gym, but the mainstay of it is my 7 primal patterns that I teach: squatting, lunging, bending, pushing, pulling, twisting, and gait. Gait includes walking, jogging, and sprinting. So most of the movements that I'm doing are using some kind of an apparatus, be it a club bell, kettlebell, dumbbell, barbell, stone, and I'm doing one or a combination of those primal pattern movements. Okay. And I intersperse that with the work in component, which is the Tai Chi, Qigong, and meditation, which I do on a daily basis as well. So that kind of summarizes the workout program. But to answer your other question is I look at each individual's profile. So for an athlete, I would do a biomotor assessment and find out, well, what is this person lacking? Is it strength? Is it endurance? Is it coordination? Is it agility? Is it strength endurance? Is it balance? Which biomotor do they need more of to reach the next level to get to where they're at? And then I would look at the way they were training. And if they should have that ability based on the way they were training, then I know there's something blocking the body, which is almost always some kind of glandular or visceral dysfunction, usually too much inflammation or biochemical challenges from eating the wrong diet, or old injuries that are not resolved, that are still working in the background. And, it takes me about 4 hours to do my assessment on the body, and it takes me about 4 hours to assess all the paperwork I require of people. And and then I write up a therapy plan based on what I've found in the assessment at all levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And I even look at people's archetypes and mythological beliefs and structures, religious beliefs and structures. So there's probably, I've never seen any system in the world that's that complete.
It doesn't sound like I've ever heard of anything like that either.
Yeah. And, it works. I wouldn't be here. That's what the Chek Institute's all about. And my system's different because the students can't just take the course and complete the course just to say I completed the course. Mm-hmm. They get tested. They can't go to higher levels until they've demonstrated that they've actually mastered those things and they're using them in their own life. Or I just tell them, you're not ready to be at this level yet.
That's great.
I don't want talking heads. I want living examples out there. But at the same time, I want to throw in there that I'm not, a lot of people many people have had the idea, Paul Chek's one of these health fanatics that lays on beds and nails and doesn't eat anything that isn't perfect or whatever. I'm all about living fully and expressing yourself. And, I say, look, if you want to party hard on all weekend, but just live properly Monday to Friday so that you can recover from it and enjoy your next party. But if you live like you're partying 5 days a week and only try to take care of yourself 2 days a week, you'll be a cancer statistic in no time. So, I like to vaporize marijuana and I like to vaporize clean tobacco and herbs and I'm a painter, so I like to get, buzzed up and connect to spirit and paint. And I believe there's no such thing as an incorrect, bad exercise or a bad drug, just an incorrectly prescribed exercise or drug. And I believe that even the use of things like psychedelic medicines or recreational drugs aren't a bad thing. I just tell people all the time, look, you have to be clear about what your dream is. And you have to be clear about when you're bullshitting yourself, about when you're debilitating your own ability to be the person you've chosen to be and to create what you want to create. So if it's alcohol, sugar, or anything that's stopping you from being that person and stopping you from having healthy relationships and having the energy to grow spiritually, then you've got an addiction. But if you can manage your cigarettes or manage your alcohol or your recreational drugs and you can still be effective and you still feel at peace inside of yourself, then you're living fully.
That's good. You are an unbelievable wealth of knowledge. I feel like we could probably talk for a long time, but I'm not going to keep you here for a few hours or myself.
Well, you can do a little bit more if you want.
No, this is good. This is really good because I think, society's perception of people that are in natural healthcare that are doing, you're like the perfect example. You're this guy that's so outside of the box, the traditional healthcare box, which is what the world really needs. We need people that are into, my slogan is unleashing your human potential. Having people really be who they need to be so they can do and have and everything in their lives, whether it's health or finances or whatever it may be.
Yeah, being healthy should not limit your capacity for experiences. It should give you the ability to have more freedom. In other words, if you want to hang out with your buddies and do a mushroom journey out in the mountains, that's great. If you like to smoke cigarettes and it's something that you enjoy and it's social, or drink coffee, if you can maintain a level of health and vitality, Christ, if you study the Hunzas and ancient tribes, they smoked cigarettes for 110 years and it didn't give many diseases. So, of course you have to then say, well, we don't want to smoke garbage cigarettes. We have to go find organic source tobaccos, which is what I do. But all I'm saying is that, the soul cannot grow its consciousness and move towards remembering what it is, which is enlightenment, without experience. And everything is a source of experience. So if it's like people that repress their need for sexual exploration. Well, one, that usually just pushes you into some kind of closet or turns you into some kind of a nutcase or turns you into somebody who's, almost bipolar in relationships because you're not able to actually nourish what you need inside, because you've got such a war going on with God in your head, which is really, unfortunately, just silliness. So, but at the same time, being too sexually explicit and going crazy can get you in plenty of trouble too. So my whole philosophy is be honest about what you need, but be intelligent about how you acquire it so you don't disable yourself or somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's the Tao, right? That's the middle way. And to me, the medical system is a tool that has its application. It's being abused by most people, and it's a corporate entity that's all about making truckloads of money and very little about actually helping people, unfortunately. But at the same time, if you need surgery, then surgery is a great tool. If you need an antibiotic because it's the best thing, then it's a good tool. But if you just live like a moron and go from surgery to surgery and antibiotic, well, then your quality of life will be so low, all you'll be able to do is fantasize about sex and watch reality TV show. And that's not having the experience.
Yeah. I mean, they're not vibrating it. They're vibrating at the same level as like a hot dog.
Exactly. And that's leukemia producing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, oh, goodness. So I don't know if I can come trying to think of more questions here. So what are you into now? What's the newest study? What are you studying now?
Oh, well, I've been studying this for a number of years. Two things I'm working on. One, I've been doing a comprehensive study of the tarot. Not so much like fortune telling at all, but basically as a tool for growing a person's intuition and understanding archetypal influences, because the tarot is a real powerful set of archetypes that are very real. And I also have been studying alchemy for many, many years. I've studied Jung for many years and many others. I have the entire collected works of Carl Jung in my library. But I developed a system called Chek Life Process Alchemy several years ago. And alchemy is a very kind of complicated system, and there's not a common language. But alchemy at its roots is deep spiritual development. So I've been working on synthesizing the works of the authors that I think have the most to share, whether they be Jungian analysts or Jung himself or people like Marie-Louise von Franz or many, many others. And I'm almost finished completing a very comprehensive system of life process alchemy that shows how the physical, emotional, and mental functions of the body interface with each other and cause reactions within each other.
Oh, cool.
And so it's a system that you can plug in the key information, and it shows you right where to go to get to the etiology of a person's problem. And then it shows you a path of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual development, acknowledging that each challenge a person has is actually the doorway to a spiritual opening.
Oh, that's pretty neat. Wow. So where can people find you?
Well, my teachings and a lot of my stuff is at www.chekinstitute.com. My blog is paulcheksblog.com, paulcheksblog.com. That's the written blog. But my YouTube channel, which has well over 500 videos on it, I usually put one up every week, is youtube.com/Paul Chek Live. And then within my system, you can go to ppssuccess.com. That's personal, professional, spiritual success, or ppssuccess.com. And there I have 12 lessons that I created based on what I saw to be the 12 most common things that stop people from living fully and achieving their dreams or achieving their athletic success. And that is a system of lessons that's designed to be progressed through. And I do every 2 weeks, I do a coaching call to answer students' questions on any of the lessons or support them with any challenge they have going on in their life.
That's great. But I know the people that are listening will have practitioners, like healthcare practitioners listening. We have a lot of athletic people, active lifestyle people that do listen. So for those that are listening, the Chek Institute, I mean, you can, like he said, you can become certified in some of his techniques and Paul's techniques, but you got to know what you're doing and you got to prove it.
Well, we teach you all that, and it's a multidisciplinary system. We have medical doctors, chiropractors, osteopaths, physical therapists, physiotherapists, athletic trainers, podiatrists, nurses, school teachers. I mean, there's over 10,000 people that have been in my courses or are in them at any given time. And they're all over the world. And we have a locator system on the Chek Institute website so that if a person wants to find a skilled Chek professional near them to get help, they can do that.
That's very cool. So I would actually want to ask one more thing. I thought Chek was just your name, but the Chek Institute actually has a meaning. CHEK.
Yeah. Corrective, holistic exercise kinesiology.
And is that something you came up with a long time ago?
Yes, actually, that was the original acronym when I started the Institute in 95, but marketing people told me back in the late 80s and early 90s, or actually in the early 90s, no, mid 90s. I started at 95. So when I was consulting marketing people, they kept telling me everyone thinks holistic is hippie stuff. Nobody's going to be interested. So for many years, actually, it was corrective high performance exercise kinesiology. And that was how I built the business, largely with teaching people how to develop athletes more effectively.
Okay.
But it was really killing my soul because my work is so much deeper than than that.
I know that now, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so I kept getting, a lot of what I call muscle heads that, they just really wanted to make their pecs bigger, dick swinging contests all the time, which for me was boring. And being a guy who's lived in a lot of intense situations, I was a paratrooper in the 82nd Airborne Division, and I raced stock cars, I drag raced, I motocross raced.
I'm glad you don't like to do dangerous things.
Well, I like hanging out with God, and Carl Jung says no man is fully alive until he has the power to destroy himself. And when you're right on the edge of that, you both. The paradox is we feel very, very alive when we know we're right on the edge of death.
Yeah.
And if people realize that you can do that, but the secret is to make it more life than death, we'd be a lot better off.
This is true. I love that. So talk about like a flow state, getting into that near death experience. It's pretty wild. Yeah.
And I think death is beautiful too, but
not now though.
Well, the thing is that it's like fruit, if you pull a fruit off the tree before it's ripe, you got to sit there and let it die anyhow, but then it's going to die at its own pace. But look at all the nutrition you're losing out of the fruit by pulling it off the tree. And so life is an opportunity for consciousness to experience itself. And if you keep pulling the fruit off the tree of consciousness, then it just has to start over. So it's kind of like quitting the third grade halfway through and just saying, I give up,
Yeah.
So, I try to teach people how to really get into life full on and, dig it, enjoy your food, enjoy your sex, enjoy your fun, but also be a contributor to the world and try your best to really add something to your profession or your creative expression, be it art, dance, music, whatever it is. And then life isn't so flat. People are stuck in flatland, and I look at the way people live, and it's just amazing. Like they don't realize that they're not living. They're like rats stuck in a cage.
Yeah.
And they have been in there so long, they don't even open the door and walk out.
Yeah. It's like that hamster wheel, right? It's just,
and so I kind of like to help them take the door off and say, it's a lot more funny than running on the hamster wheel is running in the mountains. Why don't you give that a try?
Well, yeah, totally. So Paul, this is awesome. I'm so glad we got to have this conversation, and I do want to do, if you're up for it eventually,
check in with Penny. I try to support, the more I share with guys like you, the more the word gets out into the world. And you know, with a planet with 6 billion something sick people on it, we need to tip the scales. And just like food is energy and information, so are we. We got to get good energy and good information out there, or everybody's just going to rot.
Yeah. So that's our goal with our podcast, is to share people like you with the world. Because if I'm one guy that didn't know who you are, and you're this superstar in this world, I mean, there will be a few people that are going to open this door, so to say, with you, and they're going to go, holy cow, what did we find?
Yeah, well, it's fun. Yeah, it's good for all of us. And when you're going to post your show, put it up, and I'll see if I can share you with my listeners and give you let the boomerang of love come back your way.
That would be fantastic. I'd appreciate that. So everybody, make sure you check the show notes, because we're going to put all of those spaces, all those places, if you will, that Paul mentioned before, in the show notes, so you can connect with them all over the place. And
we have that gift. We have a gift.
Oh, we do. We have a giveaway. It's the Healthy Core Cycle, the Chek Healthy Core Cycle checklist.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's something that helps you identify some of the key things we all need to know, some tips on core functioning that everybody needs to know. And so I think it's practical, and it's simple, and it's very helpful, and people seem to really enjoy it. So hopefully they'll download that at chekinstitute.com/lifestyle locker.
That's it, baby. That link will be in the show notes as well. Make sure you download it and actually take some action. Like Paul said, his students can't graduate unless they perform what they're supposed to be performing and learning. So make sure you do this, and share it on social media that you're actually doing something good for yourself.
Yeah.
All right.
Show the love.
Yeah, baby. Thank you so much, Paul.
Hey, you're my pleasure, and thank you.
So, Locker Nation, Paul Chek, how awesome was he? I hope he's inspired your body, your mind, and your spirit to go out and do something awesome for yourself. He's giving us a gift to give to you. What you're going to do, you're going to go to chekinstitute.com. That's CHEK institute.com/lifestyle locker. And what you're going to find there is the Chek Healthy Core Cycle Checklist. So make sure you go and grab that. It is for free. It's a gift. And make sure you do connect with Paul on social media. Check out his blog, his websites. And if you're a healthcare practitioner, he's got some pretty cool courses you might want to check out. So you know where to find us, Lifestyle Locker, here on iTunes and Stitcher Radio and all the other good places to listen to podcasts. And you can also find us on social media, Lifestyle Locker, on Facebook. So that's facebook.com/Lifestyle Locker. And you can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Josh Hand. All right, Locker Nation, until next time. Peace out.